My name is Caroline Parker. I am 34 years old, and I reside in an elegant home with a white roof in a tranquil suburban area of Austin, Texas. To any outsider, my life would likely appear to be a fantasy. A house with a rose garden in perpetual bloom, a handsome husband, and my full-time role as a homemaker. For over a decade, I have taken pride in dedicating myself to caring for every inch of this household. My husband, Thomas Parker, is 38 and works as a sales director for a major pharmaceutical company. He is tall, with neatly styled brown hair and a confident smile that effortlessly charms new acquaintances. In the early years of our marriage, I felt profoundly fortunate. Thomas was gallant, ambitious, and possessed a natural charisma. Visiting friends would often tease, "Caroline, you really landed a treasure. Hold on to him tight." Back then, I would simply smile, convinced our love was strong enough to withstand any challenge. We fell in love and married after dating for nearly 2 years. Initially, I was filled with hope for a perfect home, imagining it would one day be filled with children's laughter in the mornings. Yet, as years passed, anxious waits in clinic rooms, cold test results, and unsuccessful treatments slowly drained that hope. I spent 4 years undergoing fertility treatments, trying every approach from Eastern to Western medicine, until I finally let go after the last doctor sighed and said, "It's all in the hands of fate." In the beginning, Thomas was very supportive. He would hold my hand and say, "As long as I have you, I feel complete." But I still recall vividly the moments he stood silently, watching the neighbor's child play in their yard. His eyes held an unspoken yearning, and that look felt like quiet scratches on my heart. Everything shifted completely after my parents passed away. My father died from a stroke, and just 3 months later, my mother followed after a prolonged illness. That loss left me hollow, but it also made me the sole heir to the legacy they had worked so hard to build. A small but stable real estate company, along with several apartments and savings I never anticipated. That inheritance allowed Thomas and me to elevate our lifestyle. We moved into our current home, purchased a new SUV, and began taking vacations at least twice a year to luxury resorts in Florida or California. I started to notice Thomas's gaze changing, not so much focused on me, but on everything surrounding us. That was when I first felt a vague, nameless unease. To everyone around us, we remained the perfect couple. The glamorous social media check-ins, the expensive wine parties, the envious well-wishes on my posts, all of it served as a curtain, masking the nights I lay awake listening to my own lonely sighs. Sometimes I wondered if material abundance was quietly eroding something that once felt so solid between us, but then I'd reassure myself that I was likely just being overly sensitive. Thomas still appeared as the ideal man in our friends' eyes and would say sweet things to me in public. But I couldn't ignore the growing distance in his gestures, the times he smiled, while his eyes lacked their former warmth. Inside this fully equipped house, I sometimes felt like a stranger in my own life. I never imagined that the fortune I considered a gift from fate would pull me into an undercurrent I never saw coming. In the months after we moved into the new house, I observed more changes in Thomas. He seemed less eager to return home. Our routine of cozy dinners was replaced by curt text messages. "I'm busy with work. Don't wait for me for dinner." At first, I tried to believe it was merely a demanding phase at his job. Yet, over time, his explanations became so repetitive they felt hollow, and I couldn't stop my heart from tightening with a deepening sense of dread. Lately, Thomas came home late almost every night. Often it wasn't until 10 p.m. that he'd walk in, looking weary, yet his eyes held a strange, excited sparkle. On some evenings, when I gently inquired, "Is everything okay at work?" Thomas would offer a faint smile and say, "Just a lot of new projects. Don't worry." But the indifference in his tone only heightened my anxiety. What troubled me most was his phone. He no longer left it on the table as before, keeping it on his person instead. When it rang, he would quickly step onto the balcony or go down to the garage, avoiding my gaze. Sometimes I heard him speaking in a near whisper, a stark contrast to when he used to share everything with me, even casual chats with colleagues. Once, when I unexpectedly stepped onto the balcony, he hurriedly ended a call and forced a calm expression. That was a client. Big contract tomorrow. But I had heard clearly. A woman's voice, soft laughter. It didn't sound like any client he'd ever mentioned. Thomas also stopped showing me our monthly credit card statements, a practice we had always maintained. When I asked, "Can you give them to me so I can manage our spending?" he replied quickly, "I'll handle it myself. Don't want to mix it up with the company card. Too much hassle." His face showed a flicker of irritation that stunned me. It was the first time in our marriage he seemed annoyed about financial transparency, something we had always agreed upon. I began to feel lost in my own home. During long evenings alone in the living room, watching car lights pass on the street, I would wonder, is Thomas still the man who vowed to stand by me for life? I kept telling myself to trust him, to give him time. But night after night, the doubt inside me expanded like a dark cloud I couldn't dispel. One weekend evening, Thomas unexpectedly took me to a company party, an event he no longer mentioned often. The atmosphere sparkled with golden lights and soft music. Thomas laughed and chatted as if nothing was amiss. I tried to blend in, urging myself to let go of my suspicions. But then, as I stood alone near the wine bar, I overheard a conversation between Thomas and a colleague. Thomas leaned in, his voice dropping. "The project in San Antonio is almost wrapped up. After that, I'll have more freedom." The colleague chuckled softly. "You're really discreet about it. Did you leave any trace?" Thomas took a sip of wine, his eyes flashing with something I couldn't decipher. "Don't worry, everything is under control." San Antonio? I had never heard Thomas mention any project there. That city is over 100 miles from Austin, not a place he usually worked. My heart pounded as I tried to swallow the wave of anxiety rising inside me. I couldn't bring myself to move. That night, on the way home, Thomas held my hand, still playing the part of the gentle husband everyone admired. But I felt no warmth in that touch, and I knew the doubt in my heart could no longer be ignored. I believed I was calm enough to handle the changes in Thomas. But then a phone call from my best friend, Allison, rekindled the fire of suspicion I had tried so hard to smother. Allison, my friend since college who now worked at a media company in Houston, called one day as I set my teacup down. Her voice was hesitant yet full of concern. "Caroline, I need to tell you something. Last week I was on a business trip in San Antonio. I'm not entirely sure, but I saw Thomas." I froze, gripping the phone tightly. "What did you say?" I kept telling myself maybe I was mistaken, but it was definitely Thomas. He was sitting in a small cafe near the bus station with a blonde woman, younger than you. They seemed pretty close. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it didn't feel right at all. My throat tightened, my heartbeat pounding wildly. I forced myself to stay calm and thanked Allison for telling me. That night, I sat by the window, staring at the peaceful night sky while my mind churned. So many questions rushed in. Who was that woman? Why was Thomas hiding this? And why did everything align with the signs I'd observed? 3 days later, Thomas came home earlier than usual. His face was unusually bright as he entered, and before I could speak, he said, "I think we need some time for just us. Let's go to New Orleans this weekend. I already booked a room at a riverside hotel. We can rekindle things. What do you say?" I was surprised. Thomas had used work as an excuse to avoid private moments for over a year. This sudden offer made me feel both hopeful and uneasy. I tried to mask my unease. "Did you really mean that?" Thomas hugged me, pressing his cheek to my hair, his voice warm yet strangely chilling. "I love you. That's all you need to remember, Caroline." His gaze was deep, but I saw in it something that felt like a performance. The whole night before the trip, I lay awake. Once Thomas was asleep, I sat in the dim light. On impulse, I opened his briefcase, the one he always kept close. I hadn't intended to invade his privacy, but an inner push compelled me to seek the truth. Inside, besides his laptop, I found a thick file folder with a pale blue cover. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. Austin Mental Wellness Center was printed on it. The words stunned me. I flipped through the first few pages, my heart racing. Complicated medical terms and charts with red marks filled the file. One section caught my eye. It had my name, Caroline Parker. Preliminary assessment, symptoms consistent with delusional disorder. My vision blurred. I didn't dare read further. I placed the file back exactly as it was and sank to the floor, silent tears streaming down my face. Suddenly, memories flashed. Thomas's distant behavior, the late nights, the mysterious calls, his earlier words, "That's all you need to remember. I love you." I no longer knew what was true. Was this New Orleans trip truly an attempt to heal, or the beginning of something far more sinister? The trip began under soft morning sunlight, but the atmosphere in the car was heavy. Thomas drove, his eyes fixed on the road yet tense. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror so frequently I finally asked, "Is something wrong? Is someone following us?" Thomas gave a strained laugh. "It's nothing. I guess I'm just tired and a little on edge. Don't worry." That laugh no longer reassured me. Throughout the drive, he took several calls, speaking in hushed tones, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I sat in silence, each passing minute amplifying my dread. Around midday, we stopped at an old gas station in rural Louisiana. A faded sign reading "Bayou Stop Gas" swung in the breeze. Thomas turned off the engine. "Do you want to go in and get some water or something? I'll fill up the tank, then we'll head out again." I nodded and stepped out while Thomas went to the pump. A young man with sun-tanned skin and a worn blue uniform approached. His name tag read, Ethan. He began pumping gas, but subtly glanced at me through the window while Thomas checked the rear of the car. Ethan moved closer to the passenger side, pretending to wipe the window, then swiftly slipped a small piece of paper through the gap. I froze. He said nothing, just shook his head slightly with serious eyes, then walked away as if nothing happened. I glanced at Thomas. He was bent over, checking the tires, unaware. My hands shaking, I opened the note under the dashboard. "You need to get out of here right now. He's lying to you. Don't ask. Don't hesitate." My heart thudded so loudly it felt suffocating. My whole body went cold. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Thomas returned, his voice light. "Go on in and get something to drink. I'll finish up here and come join you." I clenched the paper and walked quickly into the convenience store, my mind in chaos. Who was Ethan? Why did he warn me? Was I truly in danger? Inside, I pretended to pick out water bottles, my eyes scanning for Ethan. At the end of a hallway he stood, gesturing for me to follow. I hesitated for a second, then decided to follow. Out back, near trash bins and an old generator, Ethan looked me straight in the eye, his voice low but clear. "Sorry for scaring you, but I couldn't just stand by. 3 weeks ago, I saw your husband here. He was with a blonde woman. They were very close. I didn't plan to interfere, but then I overheard them talking. The ground seemed to tilt. What were they talking about?" Ethan swallowed hard, glancing toward the front. He called her his real wife. When she asked about you, your husband said, "Let this trip take care of it, then everything will be ours." I heard it clearly, but this morning, he stopped for gas alone, called someone and said, "All the hospital admission paperwork is done. She won't have any more chances." I gripped my shirt to keep my hands from shaking. Ethan continued, his eyes earnest. "I don't know what they're planning, but it's definitely not good. Don't go back to the car. If you want, I'll take you to the nearest police station. They'll help you." Footsteps sounded. Thomas's voice called out, sharper than usual. "Caroline, where are you?" Ethan lowered his voice, pleading. "You have to decide right now. If you go back, you won't get another chance." I took a deep breath, looking into his sincere eyes. All those years of love now felt like a shattered picture. I nodded, whispering, "Help me get out of here." Thomas's voice echoed, devoid of any former gentleness. I held my breath, my heart pounding. Every piece fell into place. The calls, the medical file, this calculated trip. It was no longer suspicion. It was truth. I ran after Ethan, circling to the gas station's side exit. His old blue pickup was waiting. Hurry, don't look back, he urged softly. I climbed in, hearing Thomas's furious footsteps behind us. As the truck pulled away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Thomas was running out, his face contorted with rage and panic. Not the look of a concerned husband, but of a man watching his plan unravel. The truck roared to life, kicking up dust as we left the gas station and Thomas behind. I sat trembling beside Ethan. He glanced at me, his voice steadying. The police station's only about 30 miles from here. Hang in there. You're safe now. I could only nod slightly, tears streaming silently. At the police station in the small town of Bayou Grove, a female officer named Kelly listened as I recounted everything. The warning note, the medical file, Thomas's behavior. Kelly listened intently. At this point, we can't arrest him on suspicion alone, but we'll file a report immediately. I advise you to request an emergency protective order and consider hiring a lawyer or a private investigator to gather evidence. Ethan took me to his friend Doris's home nearby. Doris, an older woman, welcomed me with an unexpected warm hug. That evening, I called Allison and told her everything. She immediately connected me with a trusted private investigator, Nathan Brooks, who specialized in marital fraud cases. The next day, Nathan met me at a small cafe in Baton Rouge. He was a middle-aged man with sharp eyes and a calm voice. I'll start by looking into Thomas Parker's background. I suspect there's something off about his identity. 3 days later, Nathan called, his tone serious. Caroline, I need to see you right away. I've uncovered the truth. At his office, he handed me a thick file. On top was a photo of Thomas with a blonde woman and twin children, about 8 years old, in front of a house in Jackson, Mississippi. He pointed at the picture. Your husband's real name is Thomas Green. He's had another family in Jackson for the past 10 years. That woman is Amanda Green, his legal wife in Mississippi. The 2 children are his. I was stunned. 10 years meant he had another family even during our newlywed days. Nathan continued gravely. They've been plotting to take over your assets. I obtained a warrant for Thomas's call records. In the recordings, he spoke with a psychiatrist named Samuel about creating a fake file for you, preparing to have you committed under a false diagnosis to control your assets. He handed me bank statements showing payments to Dr. Samuel with the note, fee for file preparation. My hands trembled holding those papers. The man I had loved and trusted was a fraud, using my devotion to try and take everything. Nathan placed his hand gently on the table, his eyes resolute. Now you need a good lawyer. I can recommend someone. We'll work together to protect you and bring him to justice. I drew a deep breath, my heart aching, yet filled with a new determination. Even if the past was built on lies, I wouldn't let him destroy the rest of my life. After meeting Nathan, I knew I couldn't delay. I called Allison, who connected me with Sarah Whitman, a renowned attorney in Baton Rouge, specializing in marital fraud and asset theft. That afternoon, I met Sarah in her office, a space that radiated determination. She listened intently. Caroline, this evidence is enough to charge Thomas with bigamy and fraud. First, we need an immediate order to freeze all joint and individual accounts. With Sarah and Nathan's support, I signed the necessary papers. 2 days later, the court approved the freeze on our accounts and real estate. Simultaneously, Sarah filed charges in Louisiana and Mississippi. The storm began. Thomas never expected I could act so swiftly. 3 days later, police arrested him at a rental apartment near the Texas border, where he was hiding after his plans collapsed. Amanda Green was also detained as an accomplice. I remember clearly the moment I stepped into the courtroom. My heart pounded as I saw Thomas led in, handcuffed, his confident facade gone, his face pure bitterness when he saw me, no longer his trusting wife, but the plaintiff demanding justice. The case drew local press attention. Reporters lined up outside, but I no longer felt afraid. My sole focus was ending this nightmare. The trial lasted over 3 months. The evidence, recordings of his calls, bank statements, the forged medical file, photos with Amanda, their Mississippi marriage certificate, left Thomas with no defense. The verdict was delivered. Defendant Thomas Green is sentenced to 7 years in prison for bigamy and asset fraud. Amanda Green is sentenced to 3 years as an accomplice. Hearing those words, my body lightened. I gripped Sarah's hand, tears falling not from pain, but from knowing I had done the right thing. Thomas didn't look at me as he was led away. I decided to sell the house full of false memories. With the proceeds and preserved assets, I moved to a small coastal town near Mobile, Alabama, a peaceful place far from painful memories. My new home was modest, but for the first time in years, I truly felt I belonged. In the early mornings, I sat on the porch with hot coffee, listening to the waves, the sunlight glistening on the sea like a promise of a new start. In those first days in Mobile, I focused on healing. One afternoon, I saw a flyer outside the library. Support group for victims of marital fraud and emotional abuse. Share and heal together. I stood there for a long time. That night, I couldn't sleep, thinking of other women who might still be trapped. The next morning, I signed up. For the first time, I told my story to a group of strangers. My voice trembled, speaking of betrayal, of choosing between blind love and harsh truth. But the more I shared, the lighter I felt. The understanding nods, the quiet tears of other women gave me strength. From a participant, I gradually became a supporter. Together, we organized sessions, guided victims to legal help, and, most importantly, helped them rediscover their worth. Every time someone said, "Because of you, I found the courage to leave," my heart warmed. I kept in touch with Ethan, who had moved to New Orleans to finish his mechanical engineering degree. His messages held a sincerity I had never known in my false marriage. One autumn afternoon, he messaged, "Caroline, I just graduated. I got my first job nearby. My mom wants to invite you to dinner to thank you for trusting me that day. Can you come?" I read it over and over, smiling. The truth was, Ethan and his mother deserved the thanks for pulling me from the abyss. That evening, I drove to their small house in a quiet New Orleans neighborhood. Linda, Ethan's mother, welcomed me with a gentle smile and warm hug. Dinner was simple yet filled with laughter. We spoke of the past and the future. Ethan shared his excitement about his new job and his dream of building machines to help the community. Linda, with proud eyes, spoke of raising a child alone and the pain of seeing a loved one exploited. Sitting there, among people with no blood ties, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years, a sense of genuine kindness, of hearts with no hidden agendas. As we said goodbye, Linda held my hand, her voice thick with emotion. "Caroline, thank you for not turning your back on my son that day. Because of you, he's grown so much." I gently squeezed her hand. It was Ethan who saved me, and because of that I learned that real family isn't about blood. It's about those who treat you with all their heart. That night, on my way home, I stopped by the beach, opening the car door to hear the waves. The night sky sparkled with stars, and I knew my life had truly entered a new chapter, one of freedom, strength, and gratitude for the kind souls who led me from darkness. Looking back, I understand that what seemed like the deepest pain was the beginning of a meaningful new life. From a deceived wife, I found myself again, stronger, freer, and more appreciative of life's true values. I learned that family is not necessarily those who share your blood, but those who come to you with sincerity and kindness. Now I live to spread hope, walking alongside those who, like me, once felt lost. What do you think of Caroline's story and her journey of rediscovery? Share your thoughts below and let us know how you feel. Don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about family and life.